My mom laughed the night my house burned down. It was not a nervous laugh or a shocked laugh, but a real, satisfied smile as the flames ate through my little duplex in Portland. I was standing on the sidewalk, barefoot, in an oversized t-shirt, still shaking from the fire alarm, when my family pulled up like they were arriving at a show. My mom looked at the smoke, tilted her head, and said, almost cheerfully, "Finally, karma torched the trash." My dad folded his arms and added, "You brought this on yourself, Madison. Some people are just cursed." They did not ask if I was okay or if I had shoes or a place to sleep. They filmed me. They took pictures with the fire trucks behind them, snapping selfies like it was some edgy photo shoot, joking about captions and hashtags while everything I owned turned into black ash. I did not scream, and I did not cry in front of them. I just stared at the phone in my mom's hand, memorized the sound of their laughter over the crackling wood, then turned around, ordered a ride share, and left them standing there with their content. If you were Madison, what would you have done in that exact moment? Drop a comment, and let me know which country you are watching this from. The ride share smelled like cheap air freshener and late-night desperation. I sat in the back, watching the orange glow of my life disappear in the rearview mirror. My breathing was shallow, heavy with the scent of smoke, but my mind was finally clear. This was the exact moment I realized my compassion had been a luxury they had overdrafted for years. By 11:51 p.m., my house was a crime scene of their indifference. By 12:03 a.m., I was sitting on a stiff bed in a two-star motel, my laptop glowing in the dark. I did not search for how to forgive. I did not ask why. I opened my dashboard, the one I called the family logistics dashboard. It was the invisible nervous system that kept their world running. To them, I was just a cursed burden. To the numbers, I was the only thing standing between them and total collapse. I rubbed my eyes, trying to summon regret, but there was only clarity. This was not a breakdown. It was a balance sheet. First, I went to my father's tax portal. William, the man who liked to talk about hustle while ignoring his own unread bills. I had spent 5 years fixing his misclassified income and filing his quarterly taxes to keep the government off his back. He currently owed $80,000 in back taxes and penalties that he did not even know how to track. I clicked Settings, then Admin Access. I transferred every single responsibility back to his personal email. Click. Delete. He was on his own now. Anger was not loud this time. It was clinical. Next was Taylor, my older sister, the image consultant whose perfect life was built on my credit. She had a $120,000 wedding bond that required my signature as a guarantor because her own credit score was a joke. I contacted the venue's finance department through their emergency portal. I withdrew my guarantee. The contract was null and void without me. Click. Cancel. Her event of the century just became an eviction notice. They were not shocked by what they had done. They were going to be shocked that I had stopped playing along. Then there was Dylan, my younger brother, the genius founder of a startup that produced nothing but debt. He was using a shared credit card for business expenses that were mostly bar tabs and designer sneakers. I did not call to lecture him. I simply closed the account. $40,000 of his fake liquidity vanished in a second. My compassion had been a luxury they had overdrafted for years. Now I realized it had been a subscription and I was the one footing the bill. The motel room smelled like stale cigarette smoke and industrial-strength cleaner, but to me, it smelled like the first day of the rest of my life. I sat on the edge of the bed, the blue light of my laptop screen reflecting in my eyes, and I looked at the records I had kept in secret. For years, I was the silent investor in their version of family, footing the bill for a lifestyle I was never invited to share. I looked at the entries for my father, William. He liked to posture as a self-made man, a rugged developer who built things with his own hands, but the paper trail told a different story. I had saved him from total bankruptcy 3 separate times. 3 times, he had stood on the edge of a financial cliff, and 3 times, I had been the one to move the numbers like chess pieces to keep him from falling. I spent hundreds of hours restructuring his debt and managing his subcontractors, all while he treated me like a nuisance for asking for the receipts. He did not see a daughter. He saw a free logistics department that he could blame when his own laziness caught up with him. Then there was my mother, Sarah. Her whole wellness and mindfulness brand, with its 2 million followers, was a castle built on sand that I had reinforced with concrete. I was the one who negotiated her contracts and tracked her engagement metrics while she was on camera talking about inner peace. I built her logistics from the ground up, making sure her overpriced courses actually reached the people who bought them. To the world, she was an enlightened guru. To me, she was a client who never paid her invoices. I kept wondering, what did I ever do wrong? Why was I the one who had to be the strong one? I realized then that I had been living in a house of mirrors for 29 years. I had been trapped in what my therapist once called the invisible chain of the survivor. It was a prison without bars, built out of the guilt and the silent treatment I received every time I tried to say no. The hallway of my childhood home always smelled like burnt toast and silence. When I was 12, my father told me I was a phase, not a future. Back then, I believed him. I believed that my only value was being useful, a tool to be picked up and put down. I suffered from what researchers call learned helplessness, a state where you stay in a cage, even after the door is opened, because you have forgotten how to fly. Everything stayed silent for days, but in my head, their words kept echoing. I did not have to wait long for the noise to return. My phone buzzed on the nightstand of the motel, a notification from my mother's wellness page. I clicked it, expecting a miracle, but instead, I found a masterpiece of hypocrisy. Sarah had posted the video of my duplex burning, the flames licking the night sky in high definition. Her caption read, "Lessons on letting go." Sometimes the universe has to burn away the physical clutter to make room for spiritual growth. My heart is with those starting over today. This is the path to awakening. I watched the likes climb 1,000, 5,000, 10,000. Strangers were commenting about how enlightened she was, sending heart emojis to a woman who had not even offered her daughter a pair of shoes while she stood in the ashes. To the world, Sarah was a beacon of light. To me, she was a vulture who had turned my homelessness into viral content. I realized then that I was not her daughter. I was a prop. I was a narrative device used to boost her. I realized that my family had fallen into the trap of cruel normalization. When a family prioritizes an online brand over human reality, the people within that family stop being individuals. They become assets or liabilities. Because I had spent years fixing their messes, I was a high-yield asset. Because my house had burned down, I was now a liability they had to spin into a teaching moment to save the brand. Their cruelty was not an accident. It was a business decision. They had spent so long performing for an audience that they had lost the ability to feel anything that could not be captured in a 15-second reel. The silence was broken by a call from Taylor. I did not answer. She left a voicemail, her voice high-pitched and frantic. "Madison, pick up. The wedding venue just called. They said the guarantee was withdrawn, and they're canceling our date for the ballroom. That was a $120,000 contract. Are you trying to ruin my life? Call them back and fix this right now. You know I have 200 guests flying in." Seconds later, a text from Dylan lit up the screen. "Yo, the business card declined at the electronics wholesaler. I've got $40,000 worth of inventory sitting on the dock, and I can't move it. Why is the account closed?
Don't do this to me, sis.
This startup is my one big shot. Fix the card, or I'm finished." I did not reply to any of them. I went back to my dashboard. I watched as the logistics threads started to unravel in real time. I had spent a decade being the invisible infrastructure under their curated lives, the one who made sure the bills were paid, and the scandals were buried. Now that the infrastructure was gone, the collapse was inevitable. 2 weeks later, the smell of smoke had finally begun to fade, replaced by the scent of fresh paint and cheap floor wax in my new studio. It was small, with thin walls and creaky floors, but it had a heavy deadbolt that no one in my family had a key to. I sat at my computer, the blue light reflecting off the logistics dashboard, and watched as the professional escalation began. I was no longer Madison. the cursed one who fixed their messes for free. I was a supply chain analyst, and I was performing a clinical audit of a failing operation. I did not answer their calls, or the frantic voicemails about wedding deposits and declined cards. Instead, I called Julia. She had been my friend since college and was now an attorney who specialized in financial disputes and family law. We did not talk about the night of the fire or my mother's wellness posts. We talked about liability and documented debt. I have 5 years of logs, I told her, my voice as steady as a ledger. I have records of $80,000 in tax management and debt restructuring for William. I have $120,000 in financial guarantees for Taylor's wedding. I have $40,000 in direct loans to Dylan. I want a systematic severance. Julia was precise. By that afternoon, a formal notice was sent to each of them. It was not an emotional plea, it was a business communication. They were given 30 days to initiate a repayment plan for the documented personal loans before further legal action would be taken. I officially resigned as the administrator for every medical portal, every business account, and every tax filing. William was the first to realize that his safety net was gone. He sent a photo of a notice from the Internal Revenue Service. It was a formal audit regarding $80,000 in back taxes and penalties, the exact mess I had been preventing for years. "Madison, this looks bad," he texted. "Fix this immediately, or the business is finished. Family is supposed to be there for each other." I did not answer. I did not ask why. I simply forwarded the text to my lawyer. Anger was not loud this time, it was clinical. My compassion had been a luxury they had overdrafted for years, and now, the account was closed. Everything stayed silent for days, while Julia dug through the digital landfill of my family's financial history. I spent my nights staring at the ceiling of my new studio, not wondering why they hated me, but wondering how I had missed the signs. Then the phone rang. It was not a call from an unknown number or a frantic relative. It was Julia. Her voice was flat, the kind of tone she only used when she had found the smoking gun. "Madison, I am sending you a file," she said. "Look at the signature on page 4. I opened my laptop. My hands were steady. This was not a breakdown, it was an audit. The document was a loan agreement for $80,000 taken out against the equity of my duplex just 3 months before the fire. I felt the air leave my lungs, but I did not gasp. I looked at the name at the bottom, Madison Carter. The loops of the M were too tight. The T was crossed with a slanted line I never used. I did not sign this. I had never even seen this document. I zoomed in until the pixels blurred. This was not just a mistake, it was a forgery. My own father, William, had stolen my identity to secure funds to bail out Dylan's failing electronics startup. But the lethal discovery was buried even deeper in the arson investigators' supplemental report. I had always wondered why the fire started in the kitchen wall. I remembered William helping me by installing new recessed lighting as a housewarming gift. He had told me he was a professional, that I should trust family. The investigators' report stated that the fire originated from substandard wiring, wires that were not up to code, installed with a blatant disregard for safety. William did not just do a bad job. He used the cheapest materials possible and skipped the permits to pocket the remaining money he had convinced me was for the premium install. He had forged my signature to steal $80,000, then installed a ticking time bomb in my walls. He did not just laugh when my house burned down, he was watching his plan reach its final phase. He was not shocked by the flames. He was satisfied by the potential payout. I did not cry. I did not ask why. I just sat in the blue light of the screen and realized that my family were not just toxic, they were criminals. They did not just overdraft my compassion, they had committed a heist on my life. I rubbed my eyes, trying to summon regret for what I was about to do, but there was only clarity. The cursed one was not the one in the ashes. The curses were the people who had built their throne on my ruins. I forwarded the file to Julia with a one-word message: execute. The heavy brass deadbolt on my new studio clicked into place, but the silence did not last. The hammering on the door started at exactly 6:03 p.m. It was not the confident knock of a family arrival, It was the frantic thumping of people whose world had finally run out of credit. I opened the door and found a ruined version of the Carter family brand. My father, William, looked like a man who had aged 10 years in a single week. The hustle was gone, replaced by a gray, hollow-eyed desperation. Sarah stood beside him, her wellness glow replaced by blotchy skin and red eyes. Taylor was behind them, clutching a stack of canceled vendor contracts for her $120,000 wedding, like they were the remains of a suicide note. William quailed first.
He did not ask how I was.
He did not look at my new home. He reached out with trembling hands, his voice a ragged whisper. Madison, please. The Internal Revenue Service is freezing every business account I have. And that lawyer. Julia, she mentioned a forgery investigation regarding the $80,000 loan. You would not actually put your own father in prison, would you? We can work this out. I was just trying to help Dylan get his footing. It was a family decision. Sarah added her voice, her tone no longer that of a serene guru, but a panicked debtor. My followers are turning on me, sweetheart. Someone leaked the screenshots of the fire video and the financial logs. My engagement is in freefall. Thousands of people are leaving every hour. My brand is dying, Madison. Just tell them you made a mistake. Tell them you were in a bad headspace, and we're a united family. If you don't, we lose the townhouse. I stood in the doorway, a living barrier. I did not invite them in. I did not offer them a seat. I looked at them and realized I did not feel anger anymore. I felt nothing. It was like looking at a bankrupt company's liquidation. I reached into the folder on my small entryway table and pulled out a copy of the arson investigator's supplemental report. I did not shout. My voice was clinical, the tone of a professional delivering a final audit. You quailed before the ashes of my home, I said, my words falling like heavy coins. You filmed me while I was barefoot and homeless. You did not ask if I was okay because you were too busy calculating how to use the fire for your content. You called it karma. You called me a cursed burden. I looked William directly in the eye. This report says the fire was caused by your greed. You installed substandard wiring to pocket the money I gave you for a premium install. You forged my signature to steal $80,000 from my equity to fund a startup that did not exist. I did not burn your world down, William. I just stopped being the infrastructure that kept your lies from collapsing. You thought my compassion was a gift you could overdraft forever. I'm just here to tell you that the account is closed. Taylor tried to scream, but no sound came out. She just looked at the copy of the criminal complaint in my hand. I did not slam the door. I did not give them a scene for their next reel. I simply looked at the people who had built their throne on my ruins and realized they were nothing but smoke. I already did everything a daughter was supposed to do, I said coldly. Now I am doing what a victim has to do.
Goodbye.
I closed the door with the same methodical precision I used on my spreadsheets. The lock engaged. For the first time in 29 years, the air on my side of the door was finally clean. The weeks that followed were quiet. The legal system took over, and for the first time in my life, I was a spectator in a show I did not have to direct. I watched from a safe distance as their perfect world evaporated like morning mist. It was not just about the $96,000 in support or the $80,000 fraudulent loan. It was about a much deeper truth I had finally realized. There is a profound difference between having and being. Sarah and William had spent decades having an image of success and power, but their actual character was a void. Their authority was a costume they had rented, using my labor and my silence as the currency. When I stopped footing the bill, they did not just lose their liquidity, they lost their identity. They had no internal value to stand on once the external props were removed. William faced formal charges for forgery and insurance fraud. The Internal Revenue Service did not care about his hustle when it involved $80,000 in unpaid penalties. Sarah's wellness empire collapsed under the weight of her own hypocrisy. Her followers did not want a guru who used her daughter's homelessness for engagement. Taylor's wedding remained a stack of canceled contracts, and Dylan's fake startup was liquidated to pay back creditors. They once stood in front of my burning house and called it karma. Now, they were standing in the ruins of their own reputations, and I was not there to pick up the pieces. I did not stay to witness the final liquidation. I moved to a new city, where the air was crisp and the people did not need a filter to be kind. I started my own logistics consultancy for nonprofit organizations, using my skills for people who were actually trying to save the world, not just cure it. One night, I opened my laptop and navigated to the family logistics dashboard one last time. I looked at the years of entries, the thousands of hours, the sacrifices, the invisible chain I had carried. I felt a brief flicker of memory, like the smell of distant smoke, and then I hit the delete button. The screen went blank. That night, I slept through until morning. No guilt, no noise. I realized then that I was not the cursed one. I was the infrastructure that had finally walked away. If you are currently the fixer for people who do not appreciate you, remember that you are allowed to walk away. Please share this if you believe that justice will always prevail in the end.